When people think about workplaces, especially corporate hierarchies, the CEO is usually envisioned as the most powerful person in the room, someone who commands respect, issues orders, and is rarely questioned. That position naturally places them above their employees in terms of authority, financial stability, and social standing. However, the concept of role reversal of power dynamics asks what happens when circumstances flip the script, forcing the person at the top to depend on someone far lower in the hierarchy. This dynamic isn't simply about shifting who has the upper hand, it exposes vulnerabilities, redefines respect, and reveals the humanity beneath titles and positions. In the story scenario, a single dad who is ordinarily an employee beneath the CEO finds himself in the unique position of being the one with resources, security, and solutions, while the CEO, a single mom, is stranded and dependent. This role reversal creates a fascinating tension that goes beyond a simple helping hand scenario and becomes a lens through which deeper truths about class, gender, status, and emotional needs can be explored. At first glance, such a situation may seem trivial. A car breaks down, a storm hits, someone offers shelter. But underneath lies a complex network of meanings. The CEO, who is usually insulated from small inconveniences by wealth and status, is thrust into a vulnerable state where her expensive car is useless, her phone is dead, and her power means nothing against nature's fury. The employee, in this case the single dad, who is typically dependent on her decisions for his livelihood, suddenly becomes the one who can provide safety, warmth, and comfort. In that moment, the workplace hierarchy collapses, and survival needs take precedence over titles. This sudden inversion of roles creates not just an immediate practical dependency but also forces both characters to confront how fragile human constructs of power really are when compared to the uncontrollable elements of life. For the single dad, this role reversal presents an interesting shift in self-perception. At work, he may feel like just another cog in the machine, easily overlooked by executives like his CEO. His daily struggles as a single parent, his sacrifices, and his resourcefulness may remain invisible to the corporate elite. Yet here, during the storm, he is the one in control of the situation. His humble home, which might seem modest or even unimpressive in comparison to the CEO's world, becomes a sanctuary. His knowledge of how to manage without luxury, how to rely on resilience and practicality, suddenly becomes invaluable. For once, he is the authority, and not in an arrogant or intentional way, but because the circumstances naturally align to his strengths. This can be empowering for someone used to being undervalued or unseen in the rigid corporate ladder. On the other hand, the CEO's experience is more complicated. Power often creates a shell of invulnerability. Leaders of companies, especially those in high-profile positions, cultivate an image of control, decisiveness, and strength. For a woman in such a role, especially a single mother, the expectation doubles. She must constantly prove that she can balance leadership with personal responsibilities without showing weakness. But when she is stranded in a storm, stripped of her resources, and dependent on someone she would normally be giving instructions to, her carefully built persona cracks. This does not mean she becomes weak, it means her human side becomes visible, her dependence on others becomes undeniable, and she must navigate the uncomfortable territory of receiving help. That vulnerability can be both frightening and liberating, as it forces her to connect with someone not as a CEO but as a person. This reversal also illuminates the concept that real power is situational. In a boardroom, the CEO has the final say, but in the face of weather, breakdowns, and emergencies, wealth and titles lose their grip. The single dad, with his ability to provide immediate shelter, becomes the person of importance in that context. This does not mean that he gains permanent authority over her, but it demonstrates that hierarchies are fluid and circumstantial rather than absolute. Such fluidity can teach humility to those at the top and self-worth to those at the bottom. The interaction becomes a meeting point where both individuals are forced to reassess what they believe about power, dependence, and dignity. Another fascinating layer to this role reversal is the way it challenges societal expectations about gender and parenthood. The stereotype often casts men in positions of financial dominance and women in nurturing roles, yet here, the roles are inverted even further. The man is not a wealthy provider but a struggling single father, and the woman is a financially powerful CEO who, despite her professional dominance, struggles to balance motherhood. When the storm pushes them into a scenario where the father provides physical shelter and comfort, it blurs these stereotypes even more. It becomes clear that caregiving, protection, and resilience are not tied to gender roles but to individual capacities and circumstances. This tension reveals how both characters, though different in status, share a parallel vulnerability, the challenge of raising children alone while navigating societal judgments and expectations. The intimacy created by this reversal is not romantic by default, though it can evolve into that in storytelling. The intimacy comes from shared humanity. When someone accustomed to control allows themselves to be cared for, even in small ways like accepting tea in a mismatched cup or sleeping on a couch in a modest home, they expose a rawness rarely seen in professional spaces. For the employee, seeing their boss in such a state disrupts the mental distance often maintained between them and us. The CEO is no longer just the imposing figure in designer suits making high-stakes decisions. She is a parent worried about her child, a person shivering in the rain, a human being capable of fatigue, laughter, and gratitude. The relationship between the two individuals becomes layered with complexity that goes beyond professional titles. This complexity also creates dramatic tension because both characters must reconcile their experiences the next day when they return to the office. The CEO might feel embarrassed or self-conscious, aware that her employee has seen her stripped of her authority. She might worry about her reputation or about whether he now perceives her differently. The single dad, meanwhile, might wrestle with how to treat her. Does he go back to formal respect, or does he acknowledge the bond created that night? This awkwardness can create both conflict and opportunity, as both characters navigate a new dynamic shaped by that single evening. What makes it powerful is that the storm forced them into honesty, and once honesty has been shared, it cannot easily be undone. From a narrative standpoint, this role reversal becomes fertile ground for exploring deeper themes. It underscores how power is not fixed but situational, how vulnerability can create unexpected connections, and how personal struggles often remain hidden beneath professional facades. It emphasizes the truth that even the most seemingly powerful individuals need shelter, care, and understanding, just as much as those who look up to them. In essence, the reversal becomes a mirror for both characters. The single dad sees his worth reflected in the dependence of someone far above him, and the CEO sees her humanity reflected in the compassion of someone she might otherwise overlook. The storm, therefore, becomes not only a plot device but also a metaphor. It represents the uncontrollable forces of life that level the playing field and remind people that at their core, they are equal in vulnerability. In such storms, titles and paychecks fade, leaving behind only the raw truth of human need and connection. The role reversal of power dynamics does not merely change who holds authority for a night, it changes how both characters view themselves and each other in ways that reverberate long after the storm clears. Vulnerability is one of the most powerful forces in human relationships, yet it is often the hardest state for people to embrace, especially for those who carry heavy responsibilities. When two people are forced together in a moment of crisis, as in the story where a single dad offers shelter to his CEO during a storm, vulnerability ceases to be a choice and becomes a necessity. Both characters are stripped of the usual shields they carry, status, appearances, professional masks, and confronted with the truth of their private struggles. This moment of shared fragility is where trust begins to germinate, not through grand gestures, but through the quiet acknowledgement of pain and perseverance. For the CEO, vulnerability has been a lifelong adversary. She has likely spent years building a reputation as someone who cannot be swayed, someone whose decisions are firm and whose persona is unshakable. In the male-dominated environment of executive leadership, her very survival depends on projecting strength. As a single mother, the weight on her shoulders doubles, for she not only carries the expectations of her company but also the silent judgment of society that constantly questions whether she can balance work and parenting. To admit weakness, to let down her guard, feels like opening a door for criticism. Yet in the storm, she cannot control her circumstances. She has no working phone, no reliable transportation, no access to her usual safety nets. Accepting help from her employee is not only an act of necessity but also a radical act of trust. It forces her to reveal that she, too, is human, capable of being stranded, lost, and dependent. The single dad, on the other hand, lives with vulnerability daily, though in a different form. His life is defined by constant improvisation, balancing limited resources while raising his daughter. Unlike the CEO, he cannot hide behind power or wealth. His vulnerability is open, worn on his sleeve, visible in the modest home he maintains, the worn furniture, the mismatched cups in his cupboard, and the careful budgeting of his income. Yet within that vulnerability lies resilience, a resourcefulness born out of necessity. His strength is not in projecting authority but in surviving the everyday storm of single parenthood. When he offers his CEO shelter, he is not posturing or trying to prove anything, he is simply doing what he has always done, finding solutions in difficult circumstances. But for someone used to being invisible, to suddenly become the source of stability for a powerful figure creates a shift in how he perceives his own worth. Trust enters the equation the moment the CEO steps into his home. Trust is not simply about safety from the storm but about allowing herself to be seen in an environment where she holds no control. The walls of his home reflect his reality, not hers, and she must accept that she is a guest in a world far removed from her own. She drinks tea from a mug that does not match her polished aesthetic, she accepts warmth from a blanket that is perhaps old but comforting, and she listens to his daughter's laughter that interrupts the tension of the night. Every small acceptance builds trust, not just in him as a provider of shelter but in the idea that she does not always need to lead, direct, or command. Trust also grows for the single dad, who recognizes that his boss has entrusted him with a version of herself that few have likely seen, tired, damp, unsure, and reliant. It is a trust that transcends professionalism, moving into the realm of shared humanity. Hidden struggles underpin this entire interaction. Both the single dad and the CEO are single parents, but their struggles are invisible to each other until the storm forces conversation. On the surface, the CEO's life may appear enviable: wealth, prestige, influence, and success. To outsiders, she may seem untouchable, yet behind closed doors, she is stretched thin, waking up in the middle of the night when her child cries, battling guilt over missed school events, and living with the silent fear that she is failing at both roles. Her loneliness is compounded by the fact that people assume she has it all, leaving her with few spaces to admit the depth of her exhaustion. The single dad's struggles are different but equally profound. His life is marked by constant financial pressure, the fear that one missed paycheck or one unexpected bill could destabilize everything he has built for his child. He lacks the luxury of hired help or extended family support, managing everything from cooking to schoolwork to late-night fevers on his own. At work, he may blend into the background, just another employee among many, but at home, he shoulders the entire weight of parenthood without complaint. His hidden struggle is not only financial but emotional: the quiet sacrifices, the moments when he questions if he is enough, the nights he stays awake worrying about the future. When these two individuals meet in the crucible of the storm, their hidden struggles find a rare outlet. The CEO admits, perhaps reluctantly at first, that she is a single mother, revealing a piece of her personal life that she normally shields from professional spaces. The dad, in turn, shares pieces of his story, not with the intention of impressing her, but simply because the honesty of the night demands it. Their struggles do not cancel each other out but echo each other, creating a resonance that neither expected. They realize that despite the vast gulf in their professional lives, they are bound by similar fears, similar responsibilities, and similar loneliness. The themes of vulnerability and trust are not abstract, they manifest in the smallest details. The CEO accepting a seat at his worn kitchen table is vulnerability. The single dad handing her a blanket and trusting she will not judge his modest circumstances is vulnerability. Her listening attentively as his daughter talks about school is trust. His belief that she will not take advantage of this situation to ridicule him at work is trust. Each interaction is a quiet negotiation of faith, an unspoken agreement that they will not weaponize what they see in each other during this storm. This dynamic also challenges the idea of what strength truly means. Society often defines strength as dominance, control, and the ability to command others, but in this moment, strength is redefined as the courage to reveal what is hidden. For the CEO, strength becomes the ability to admit she cannot do everything alone. For the dad, strength is not just his ability to provide shelter but also his willingness to let her into his private world without shame. In doing so, they both discover that strength and vulnerability are not opposites but companions, each giving meaning to the other. As the storm rages outside, the metaphor becomes clear. The external chaos mirrors the internal storms they both carry. The CEO's storm is her battle against societal expectations, professional burdens, and personal guilt. The dad's storm is his constant struggle against financial instability, exhaustion, and the fear of inadequacy. By sharing a night under the same roof, they weather both storms together, finding in each other a reflection of their own humanity. The storm outside will pass, but the storms within remain, softened only by the knowledge that they are not as alone as they once believed. Trust forged in vulnerability has a lasting impact. When the storm ends and they return to their respective roles, the memory of that night cannot simply be erased. The CEO may look at her employee differently, not as someone beneath her but as someone who understands a side of her life others cannot. The dad may carry with him the quiet assurance that even those who seem most powerful struggle too, and that his resilience has value beyond measure. Their hidden struggles remain, but they are no longer invisible. They have been acknowledged, shared, and honored in a way that transforms both of them.